Okay, we're in Kufid Gimel Halacha Zayin, Mitzvah to the Mechaber. The Mechaber is talking about how you make Bishul Yisroel. So the Mechaber says, Ein Shgira Satana, Shigira Satana, and the Ramah sticks in a few words here. He says, what does Shigira mean? It means Havara. It means lighting up. From a pasuk, which I would know, but they tell me it's in Yecheskel, Uvaru v'hisiku, which Targum v'yahoin Shigirin, Shigrin. So the word Shigira Satana means to light up the tanner. Moilin, it doesn't help. El b'pas. This that we said that you could light up a fire only helps by pas. Al b'shar hamispashlim, but through other things that just need Bishul Yisroel, Ein Shigira Satana, v'lo hadlaga se'esh ma'al u'moirid. It doesn't make a difference if you light the fire, or you set up the oven. It doesn't make a difference. El hanocha dafka. The only thing that makes it Bishul Yisroel is if the yid puts the food onto the fire. If you want to cook something in a pan, in a guy's oven, but you have to put the food into a place where it can cook. That's what the Mechaber holds. We're not going to do the Ramah, but as you well know, the Ramah argues on that. Just shouldn't go home and think the wrong way. The Ramah argues and holds that those schools apply here also. Okay, we're going to stick to the Mechaber for this week. Okay, where does this thing come from? The Gemara
right. This is where we write for starting is available.
Don't get me started. Yes. Okay. We'll talk about this. Okay. So where does it start? The Gemara says. The Gemara says that for Pas Yisrael, the Gemara says there's three ways to make Pas Yisrael. And we call them the three malachos. The three ways to make it. Either you could light the fire, you could put the food onto the fire, or you could stoke the coals. Okay, that's one Gemara. The Gemara also. The Gemara about Pas. The Gemara also, in describing how you make Bishul Yisroel in a bunch of ways, it's not telling you this is how you make it. Then the Gemara is telling you this is how you make it. In other Gemaras that talk about how you make Bishul Yisroel, it says, if a lady puts a pot on the fire, and the descriptions it always gives is of putting the food onto the fire. Okay? It doesn't say that's the only thing you could do, but in describing Bishul Yisroel, those are the examples are always of putting the food onto the fire. Okay? So by pas, it says specifically you could do all three things. And by Bishul, it doesn't say you can't do those things, but the cases in the Gemara are of people putting the food onto the fire. It was the din in Halachavav of a yid putting the food onto the fire, talking about meat, and it talks about putting it onto the fire. Okay? So there's I'm going to call it three shittas. It's really more than three shittas and how to understand what's going on here. Okay. The Ran says that the only time Shkira Sataner, lighting the fire, helps is for making pas. Why? Because the way you light a fire for bread is different than the way you light a fire for other foods. And therefore, only that pas does it work. What does he mean? The Taz says what the Ran means is like this. If you think about it, think about a matzah bakery. That's the closest we have to that is. When you light a fire for bread, you don't have the fire burning underneath the bread. What you do is you put in the logs, you make the oven really hot, then you push the logs to the side, and plop the bread down in the middle. Okay, that's the way they would bake bread. Okay, you see it in a matzah bakery. That's how you see it. They throw in the logs, they get them nice and hot, and they push them to the side, and then just lay the bread down in the middle.
It keeps the oven going hot. The logs
either they're on the side, or they're just the heat of the oven, just the chambers. No, that's not why, but it's related. Close. So therefore, when you light fire for baking bread, it's so clear that the person is trying to bake bread that therefore the malacha is very connected to the baking. As opposed to when you cook food, when you cook a pot of soup, what you do is you light a fire and you put the pot right on top of it and it stays on top of it. And that's different. Okay? The Ran doesn't really explain why that should make a difference. He just says if you bread, the way the Taz understands him, the lighting of a fire for bread is different than the lighting of a fire for Bishul, so it works for Pas, doesn't work for Bishul. Okay? Now, before we get on to another version of what the Ran might mean, we'd have just two questions. I know the answers. We have two questions. What would the Ran say in these two cases? What would he say in a modern oven, baker's oven, okay, in a bakery that has an oven, where they bake just the same way that you cook? Okay? Their fire stays on all the time. It just goes through a chamber and there's fire burning away over there. So if the Ran, the way the Taz learns, is only makel because it's a special kind of a fire, it's a special baking fire that you light the fire and push it to the side, would the Ran be makel, according to the Ran, would the Mechaber hold that you can make Pas Yisroel, according to the Ran, would you be allowed to make Pas Yisroel by lighting a baker's oven, a modern baker's oven that works just like a stovetop? Okay, there's nothing different about that fire then
Fire still indirect. I mean, it's not directly underneath the. Say it.
it's not what?
It's not like directly underneath the. It's like. Whatever.
You're saying in a pot, you put the food right underneath it. When you're making a barbecue, you have the fire burning, you put the meat right on top of it. Opposed to here, it's like on the side. It's just a warm shape. See, maybe the taz doesn't mean, the point is not that you turn it off, it's that you keep it away. You don't put them next to each other. Okay, that could be.
But then I would say pump here, that according to our modern ovens that we have nowadays, which shows that that's why you're cooking it, so then if I would turn on the oven, why wouldn't that be enough according to the Ran?
So that's the other half of the question. The other half of the question is, what happens if you make food that's not in the rules of pas Yisrael, but you make it in a bread oven? Okay, like for example, let's say we had it in here, is a din of pas oiris. Okay, it doesn't need pas Yisrael because it's not made from the 5 grains. So let's say you make that in an oven, in a pas oven. Okay, or what happens if you say it's because it's indirect? And what happens if you make a roast in an indirect oven? And nowadays, we would say that kind of oven is considered indirect, and that's what the Ran meant. So what happens if you make a tafshil in that way?
Yeah,
What I'm saying is like this. When the Ran says this, is he saying that this is a rule that wherever it's bread-like, it's mutter, where it's not bread-like, it's usher? Or is the Ran saying that no, because of this difference, pas has the kula and tafshil does not have the kula?
No matter what.
No matter how you do it nowadays, because if this is what the Ran is saying, it has to do with it being indirect, because you push the fire to the side, so then we should look, it shouldn't be a rule of pas Yisroel and Bishul Yisroel. It should be a rule of this kind of oven versus that kind of oven. Okay? We don't know the rule like that. We know the rule of pas Yisroel and Bishul as if to say he means it, as if he means the rule as this is the svara, because pas is different than tafshil because of the fire, and then the rule became it only works for pas Yisroel, not for Bishul Yisroel. Okay? Now, the Beis Yosef has a different, he doesn't say this in the Ran, Beis Yosef says this on his own, but the Beis Yosef says like this, but what he says might be what the Ran, or something along what the Ran means. The Beis Yosef says like this, he says when you light up an oven to bake bread, he says, it's clear that the Yid is participating in something that needs a Jew's participation. He's baking bread. As opposed, you'll hear it from the other side, as opposed to, if you're lighting an oven to cook food in, then maybe you're going to cook a food that's not oil shulchan aruch. Maybe you're going to cook a food that's nechal chai. In other words, maybe you're going to do something that doesn't need a yid to participate in the cooking. And if so, it's not, I don't exactly get this, but if so, it's not obvious what the yid is doing, that he's doing something to make pas Yisroel, to make Bishul Yisroel. Therefore, it's not considered Bishul Yisroel. Okay? Now, I don't really understand it, but he says something along those lines. Beis Yosef. Now, Beis Yosef says that to say the following kula. You know, say maybe then the people who hold you can only be makel, a yid can only light the fire for pas, not for tafshil. He says maybe you'd be makel if the food is already on the fire. That we're talking about here, you lit the fire before the food got on. What happens if the food's already on and then you stoke the coals or you stir the pot? So then the food is already on. Then it's obvious that what I'm doing is to make this food Bishul Yisroel. He says maybe the machmirim wouldn't be mattered in that case. That's what Beis Yosef says. Okay, Beis Yosef is not so thrilled about that, but he says if the reason why doesn't work by tafshil is because it's not obvious I'm doing something that needs a yid's participation. Maybe I'm going to cook something that's nechal. I'm going to bake apples in here. Okay, maybe that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
So once the apples are in already, then you could see. The meat is in there. You could see what I'm baking. Then maybe I could play around with it at that point, because then it is obvious what I'm doing. Okay, that's what he wants to say.
You're doing it for the purpose of making Bishul Yisroel.
No, but no, you're right. It's not obvious you're doing to make it Bishul Yisroel, but you're participating in a cooking that needs my participation. That's something that's good.
Also, I think it's a hecker. Why is he doing this?
He's cooking. What do you mean? You don't stir it when you're cooking.
Right. So that same question applies to the pas also. Right. And the pas also, I fully understand the Beis Yosef. In the pas also, maybe I'm just lighting the fire because I don't have to participate. Just I'm the janitor. This is my job.
No one knows how to light it, right?
And so somehow, I don't know why, somehow that makes a difference that this is the thing that needs me to be there, and therefore by my being there, that makes the heck or something. I'm not sure. Okay? But I have questions here, the same kind of questions. What will be if you have an oven that's not meant like the Beis Yosef makes? Let's say you have an oven for Bishul, it's an oven for fish. Okay? It's a fish place. That's all they do is they make fish. And this is an oven made for cooking fish. That's a special oven to cook fish. And the Yid lights that. So then would the Beis Yosef be making on that case also? Because in that case, the person lighting it, it's obvious that he's doing something that needs a Yid's participation. I mean, there's nothing really about pas better than tafshil. Just that pas, the baker's oven, it's obvious that this oven is an oven that needs a Jew to bake, to be part of the cook. Okay, so I'm not sure what the, Okay.
Anybody ever say such a thing?
The Beis Yosef
Surprising that you can use-
the Beis Yosef himself is not so thrilled with this answer. Okay, and we don't see it here in the din that he makes. I don't think you see such. You'll see. I'm going to talk about a little bit more in a second. We don't really see such a difference. I'm going to say within this svara that he says, it's really both. The Beis Yosef doesn't connect this to the Ran. Okay, but the Beis Yosef and the Ran are both saying that it's not pas that's different than tafshel. It's a bread oven or something about the way you make bread is different than the way you make tafshel. And the Beis Yosef himself even said, it even applies. You can make nafkaminas out of it. You could say, therefore, if you do to a tafshel in a way that it's obvious, then it's mutter. He doesn't say it's a rule. Now, pas is this and tafshel is this. It's not pas and tafshel. It's bread ovens are a certain style and tafshel ovens are a certain style.
It's what's being, it is pas and tafshel. Because pas is saying that pas has to, pas has to have pas Yisroel. Bishul, there are cool. Not everything needs Bishul Yisroel.
Right.
So it is a difference between pas and Bishul. Because pas always needs to have a Jew doing something, and Bishul doesn't always have to do something.
But he says, if you have a bishul in a way that it's obvious that I'm participating, I mean, the food's already on and I do something to the food at that point, then he says that would be mutter also. That's what he's trying to be mekel, to say that's, so,
Right, okay.
even though it's bishul, but now the bishul became like a pas. It became obvious that this food needs me to be part of it, so therefore it's mutter. So let's say if it's a fish oven, okay? Let's say in the Ran's case, let's say I'm baking other things in the bread oven, okay?
It doesn't mean that it needs to be part of it per se. It's just that in order for me to be able to eat it, so when I'm there doing that shows that. Okay, I mean, it doesn't really show anything.
Okay. And just as a little side point over here, and this is just a dig, it's in brackets over here, which is the Ran is learning that shkiras hatana means the word shkiras hatana, and it's true all over the place. We use it to mean a bread oven. Okay, a bread oven has a special kind of a way. That's how the Ran learned that shkira means for a bread oven. It's just a little dig is that in the pasuk that this pasuk that the Ramah brings, which is a pasuk in Yecheskel, it says uvaru v'hisiku. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Okay, and everybody says over there that the pasuk means that the two words mean the same thing. Just a repeating it, just for the poetic way to say it. It's a repeat of the words. But the Malbim says that no, it's not true. The Malbim over there in that pasuk says uvaru means to light a fire for heat in your house, like just for warmth, and the siku means to light it for baking bread, for cooking food. Okay, so the Malbim is not like the Ran. Okay, the Ran says the word shkiras hatana means a very specific kind of lighting that's only for bread. Fine. Now that's one sort of pshat. The second pshat is the Rashba. The Rashba himself actually has two pshatim. Okay, one pshat is, which is the more famous one, which says at the beginning and at the end is, the Rashba says is that the kulas of pas that we have of doing the three malachas only apply to pas, because pas has kulas because it's such a staple food and because it's so important. Well, we learned about it in more few days, so we're more makel. So we're makel by pas, we're not makel by tafshel. Okay, that's the more the Rashba says. But what we think of as a shita, the Rashba also says another pshat in the middle. Okay, this is his middle pshat there that he says like this. He says the only time he says the people who say, let me see if I get this straight. This that we're makel to allow things like hashlochas kiseim and eish me'eish, which we'll see the Ramos going to talk about, that we're going to allow it by pas, is only the people who hold that pas palter is mutter. Those people will hold that you could do hashlochas kiseim and eish me'eish and those kind of things. Okay. In order to make something pas Yisroel, you could do those things. Okay. What he means is like this. The people who hold that pas palter is mutter, what are they really saying? If you hold that pas palter is mutter, you're really saying is you look for cases when there's no chashash of chasnus, and I'm sorry, you look to make a hecker to avoid the chashash of chasnus, and that's good enough. And the people who don't hold pas palter is mutter say, too bad, the tear is a tear, it's also all the cases. So if you're from the people who hold that you can make a hecker to avoid the isser, so you can make anything. You want to do a hashlochas kisim or eish me'eish, those kind of things. What's the difference? A hecker is a hecker. Okay, it's good. Do the check. If you hold that pas palter is not mutter, that means is you hold that you have to, once the gzera is, you're sort of stuck with that gzera. So then it won't make a difference if you're going to do these other things that are not really part of the cook. Okay, the last sheet is the Da'at Moshe brings from a bunch of Rishonim. He starts with the Terumas HaDeshen, who says if you have you're allowed to have someone who's not Jewish cooking in your house, because it's efsher that somebody won't do something when they pass by. Okay, they won't do something to the food when they pass by. So therefore, there are those who say that's a document. We had it in a couple of halachos ago. Okay, so he says, so you see from there, and the Ramah is going to talk about it when we get to there, Mitzvah Shem next time, that you see from there that even stirring the pot is enough to be bakel. You're just stirring the pot of it. You don't have to put the food onto the fire. The shiksa is the one who's putting the food onto the fire. So what are you doing? You're only just doing something afterwards. That's good enough.
That's the
Okay,
Ramah
now,
sheet.
this is a third sheet. We're talking about the three different sheets in this din here. We're not going to talk about the Ramah.
Okay.
Now, but within
Okay.
so that shita, now you might think that the Terumas HaDeshen just means like the Beis Yosef. Remember, the Beis Yosef said that once the food's on the fire, even everyone, there's a tzad to say that everyone will be makel, because then it's obvious you're doing it for the bishul. It's already on the fire. But the documentary brings a whole bunch of other people who held that it works even without that. Okay, this is Terumas HaDeshen. This is the first one, but it brings a bunch of other people who say that it's mutter. All these hashachos, kisem, and eish, all these things that have nothing to do with food on the fire are all mutter even by tafshel. And Mitzvah Shem will do the Beis Yosef next time. Okay, so we have our three sheets over here. And the Mechaber, as we just read, the Mechaber accepts the stricter shita that in order to make it Bishul, in order to make something Bishul Yisroel, the Yid has to put the food on the fire. Okay? Now, the Chalkos makes a very good deal over here, which is, and he brings it's really from Olavush, which is like this. The Mechaber says a Yid has to put the food onto the fire. Okay? Now, if you read that by itself, you would say which is really what I said to you, which is the Gemara, the Ran almost says it. There are three malachas that to make pas Yisrael. Of those three malachas, the only one that works a bishul is for the Yid to put the food onto the fire. Mm-hmm. So he says, hold on a second. If you look in halacha above, it says that if you stir the pot, if you turn the food over in the middle of the cooking, that also makes it bishul Yisrael. That's halacha above. Okay, it talked about a Yid stirring the pot or turning over the food. So that does make a Bishul Yisroel, but the Lavush says like this. He says, so you could make Bishul Yisroel by putting the food onto the fire, or by stirring the food in the pot,
which is on the fire.
but you can't make Bishul Yisroel by lighting the fire, or by stoking the coals. Okay? So now, if this is not such a hard, easy thing for me to understand this, what's the difference between stirring the pot and stoking the coals?
Because I'm
lighting the fire. What? No, see, lighting the fire is the food's not yet there.
There's no hecker.
If you light the fire, so then
the food's not there.
it's not there yet. But
Right.
the point is, when the food is already on the fire,
then it's okay.
then you.
Nobody said that yet.
Yes, that is true. We're gonna get that in a second.
We
Yes,
didn't
that's
get there
true.
yet. Don't-
Yes,
don't-
so the Levush's words are the Levush's words are that if you stir the food, he says, "Ikar b'shul hu aydei hipuch or hagasa b'soichay," as opposed to stoking the coals. Somehow it's not good. This
Even
is
though the
again,
food is on top of it.
even though the food's on top of it. Meaning, if he would say like the Beis Yosef had said that once the food's there, everything that shows you're doing it, I would get that. But he says it. If you stir the food, that makes it Bishul Yisroel. You stoke the coals, that doesn't make it Bishul Yisroel. I'm not 100%. I'll give you guys a lot of homework. Okay.
Can I ask one other question?
Go ahead.
If I have the food on top, let's say it's a big pot, according to the Beis Yosef and the other ones, and the guy put it on there, and I turn on the fire, but it's still, according to that, doesn't help. I got to put the food onto the fire, right?
That's not correct. If the food is already on the fire, on the stovetop, and you turn the fire on, we're going to see in a second that it's Bishul
We're
Yisroel.
going to see it. We didn't get there yet.
We're going to see that we showed a few times.
Would it also help, let's say the fire was on already, and then he put the pot on edges there. Would it also be considered that I put it on if I move it over a little bit and then put it back on?
You have to take
Do I have to take it off
off.
completely, or by me moving it partially off so it doesn't cook properly?
We're going to see that.
You know what I'm trying to say? You can't cook it unless it's mom sitting.
We're going to see about that
If
in a
it's
little
there, then it can't cook. It's all.
We're going to see about that in later. Yeah, you have to move it all.
It's heavy.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
it's hot.
So now, this Shaila, this thing, we're not even up to the Ramah yet. Is negev to people who are Sfardim. Okay, and they wanted a Bishul Yisroel for Sfardim. Meaning, we're going to find that the Ramah says we're making about all these things, so we have an easier time making Bishul Yisroel. Okay, but for Sfardim who want to have that either in a restaurant or in their own house, if they have a
catering event,
or they have in their own house, they have a shiksa in the house. who's doing cooking. So for Ashkenazi, it's easier to make. We'll find out it's easier to make a Bishul Yisroel.
Yeah.
What are they supposed to do?
Don't
Okay.
have livings.
So try like this.
Not a lot of Sarn really keep. No, I shouldn't say not a lot, but not all Sarn really keep this, right?
So that's what
But they're just overwhelmed by Ashkenazi culture over here.
So
They help themselves.
our simple understanding would be is what are you talking about? The Machabres they have to follow that. Okay, and there's what I wanted to tell you was there's a famous truth from Ravad Yosef saying, how come all the Sfardim are makel about this? That's what he said. How come, like you said, they're just swallowed up by the culture that all the hashkachas are given, not all, but lots of hashkachas given by Ashkenazim, and the Sfardim eat in all these places. He doesn't talk about a lady in the house, he's talking about a restaurant. But he says, how come they do that? They go to yeshivas. Okay, how come they do these things? And the hashkacha is done for an Ashkenazi standard, and it's not good enough for
Okay.
Answer?
I'm about to say.
No answer.
There is an answer. Let me finish. I'm not finished.
Talmud Torah can make it cool.
No, that's not what he says. So he says like this. He says, look, and this is very, I don't read his truths all the time, but to me it's very atypical to the way his answer is. He says like this. He says, there's a tziruf here. There's a tziruf here. He says there are 4 reasons to think that the food should be mutter. Okay, now for each one of these things, Svardim don't hold to these things. Some of them, even Ashkenazim don't hold them. But he said like this. One is, according to the Ramah, it's Bishul Yisroel. They're doing Bishul Yisroel according to the Ramah. One is, some people hold, you only consider Bishul Akum for people from Goyim who are Oiv the Avodah Zarah. But Goyim who are not Oiv the Avodah Zarah don't make Bishul Akum. Okay, I told you, we don't hold like all these shitas. But there's such a shita. He says another shita. He says, if a guy is working in a Jew's house, we saw in Halacha Dalet, there have been Rafayim hold that that's not Bishul Yisroel at all. If it's in a basic, it's not Bishul Akum. Sorry, it's Bishul Akum. So in the restaurant owned by a Jewish person, it's not Bishul Akum. He says, or another thing is, there's those who hold that if you have someone who's a servant, and maybe even some hold that if a guy just works for you, he's paid to work for you, that doesn't make any kiruv. When the guy makes food for you, makes food, you don't feel any special closeness. The guy's being paid to do it.
Not 3 and 4 the same thing?
No. The Rabbeinu Rafayim holds that
Jewish
The
house.
Sfardim is the same thing.
Jewish house.
The point is that there's no
it's related. Yes, it is related. You're right, they're related. But there's 2 levels like of those shitas. Okay. Okay. So
his last 2 wouldn't work in a factory manufacturer.
I'm exactly right. It's
We got
exactly
off palter.
So he says so now this is the part that it's not so atypical that he should tell you many shitas. That's not surprising. but it is that he says like this. He says Sfardim have a rule that they always follow the Mechaber. Ravad is very big on that. That if the Shulchan Aruch says that he doesn't care if he can bring you 726 shitas, that whole line, that doesn't care. But in this case, he says as a limud schus. He doesn't say it's mutter. He says as a limud schus on the people who make it. He says he brings 29 achronim who say that if there are 2 shitas, 2 reasons to be mekel, that even though the Mechaber is machmer on both of them, there are some who hold that you could be mekel. So here he has 4 reasons to possibly be mekel. So therefore, it's a limud schus. He says the machmer tabla bracha, but the limud schus why all those svardim are soymach on this school. Okay, that's what he says. It's a limud schus. Okay, and they'll tell you that. Okay, so now, but the okay, I'll get to the fact. I'll skip it. Okay, I'll skip to that part. People use this shub from Bavaria to say that Svardim can eat all food under Ashkenazi hashkacha because the Ashkenazi Bishul Yisroel is good enough for Svardim also. Rabbi Bavaria said it's good enough. Now, like Yossi said, he doesn't say that. He's talking about in a restaurant where the 2 bigger reasons, which is it's a Bishul Yisroel and it's a shifcha of a yid, all those things are more applied more seriously in those cases. In a factory, in his potato factory that makes potato products only Bishul Yisroel for Ashkenazim, we don't have all these sirufim. He doesn't say that, it's mutter. Now people say that. What?
There are other two.
The other sirufim? Okay.
But spelled,
Okay. Maybe you could say that. You could maybe say that. It's not the true Ravanya. You know what I'm saying? You could make up your own tzirufim. No, I'm just saying they say this is a well-known truth, especially if you're Sephardi. From Ravanya. But he doesn't say, now maybe Rabbi Raka will tell us, Ravanya said this, there's other tzirufim factories. Right, but that's the case Ravanya is talking about, is for a boy who's in Tel Yeshiva. We have to ask Rabbi Raka we have to ask Rabbi Raka if he knows, if he would say the same thing for other cases. Maybe he would say the same eating factory food also. I don't know. Okay, now, but it is one last thing about factory before we get back to the other thing is we talked about in Halacha Hey that when they want to make food that's Bishul Yisroel for Svardim, so what they did was they did you know what a retort is? Okay, it has this huge like wagons, and on these kind of retorts have big wagons with 1,000 cans in it, and they put the wagons in, they lock the machine up, and then they cook the food up. So what the Svardim said is they want to do is they want to roll the wagons into the retort in order to make it Bishul Yisroel. Okay, so
Who lights the fire?
so they said that was
lit already.
They said no,
It's
that
lit
doesn't make
already,
it.
Rabbi.
No, it does, the fire's not lit already. It's never
That's
lit
a
already.
problem. That's a
So
problem.
that was not worth. That was not making it Bishul Yisroel. Okay, and not only that. This what I'm about to say.
Fire was not lit.
Because right, you're just putting rolling food around the factory. What Rashba said
Once the
was,
guy's there, he'll turn the fire on.
Rashba said is the opposite. The problem was, really, the question was, the guy was ready to do it. He didn't think it was a shiloh. He just couldn't push the wagon. Okay? He isn't from the right nationality for pushing
My
wagons.
question, I answered that question. I'm in the Chicago with the
That was a shiloh of say, yeah, that was a whole complicated, that was the,
It
okay.
starts in the back pushing it.
But that was the shiloh. That was the whole shiloh about Messiah. Okay, but the thing was, Rabbi Shachtar was partial. It doesn't say this, but if the food is in there, if the food is already in, we talked about it. Hey, if the food's already in and you turn the fire on, then you're doing the bishul. How can you say it's not bishul yisrael if I put on the fire? Okay, so he thought that was how it.
before not.
So we said the Mechaber holds if you light the fire, meaning you light fires in your house, and then go and put food on, then that's not bishul yisrael.
Right, so what's
but
the
if the food's on the fire already, and then the food's on the stove,
did everything.
You did everything. It was nothing. It was just sitting there cold.
And the Shabbos, you did the bishul, and nobody else did, then you did it.
Right. So then you're the whole mavashal. So he thought that was obvious that even for Sephardi, so if I remember, there was a true. I don't remember who it was from. One of the Sephardi,
So
like
the
chief
whole
rabbis
time?
said it was from the
So by me putting it, so what do you use as eight so with the two?
Let the people put the wagons in. Let the regular non-Jewish
them turn
employees
it on.
let them turn it on. That's easy to turn it on. You push the button, it'll turn the knob, whatever you have to do to turn it on. Once the food's ready, that was okay. Now, the one question back to the restaurants is, which is like this. We said, Rabbi Vadia said that he could melamed zchus that the Sephardi could eat in the Ashkenazi restaurant, the restaurant with Ashkenazi restaurant. What happens, but if the restaurant owner is Sephardi? Is he allowed to have a restaurant that only does Bishul Yisroel for Ashkenazim? Now, the question, there's two levels to this question. One is if he's the caterer by Rabbi Rakashul. Okay, here he's a Sephardi person serving food to Sephardim, and that's who he's serving it to, and he's only doing it in an Ashkenazi scene. That seems like the hardest to justify that he should be allowed to do that. Okay, but what happens if he's not? What happens if he wants to open up, mangal? Okay, right? He's a Sephardi guy, and he wants to open up a restaurant. It's going to be Bishul Yisroel only according to Ashkenazim. So now, Rabbi Shachtar said, can't do it. He says, lifnei iver. He says, you hold that it's also to eat this food. You're a Sephardi. You're not allowed to eat this food. What are you doing going and serving that food to other people? What are you doing serving the food to other people?
Why not for him?
Why
You're
not?
serving something that they hold these on this one.
Okay. Terumas HaDeshen, what are you talking about? The other guy holds that it's mutter. He says, what do you want from my life? So Rabbi Shachtar,
Someone who keeps Kol Yisrael, is he allowed to have a restaurant on Kol Vakum?
right, it would be the same question. Rabbi Belsky said, look, it's legitimate cheatus, and as I hold my way, you hold your way. It's not like I think you're all off. I mean, there's two legitimate cheatus, and I hold my way, you hold your way. He doesn't think that's lifnei iver. Rabbi Shachtar, I didn't look this up. There's a statement about if someone doesn't smoke on Tisha B'Av. Okay, I guess if you're a smoker, you know this shiloh.
Is this Shabbos to serve to Ashkenazim or to serve to Sephardim?
So to Ashkenazim. To serve to Sephardim is hard. Again, it's harder to justify. You should be allowed to serve to Sephardim.
So to even serve to Ashkenazim?
He thought that was it, right? Because if I hold that it's usher, why would I let you do it? I think you're not. I think
you can't give it like you said.
I don't think that this. It's not like I'm a kohen and I'm giving you the Yisroel to the basic parts. I think that you're not allowed to do it either. I think that the shofar is correct.
It's Shabbos, we're inviting people to carry the area. Shabbos. You know they're going to get.
Yeah. If I think you're not allowed to, if I think I'm not allowed to carry, so then what am I telling you to carry for? The same Torah. If I think I'm just being machmir, so then I can say you don't have to be machmir. But if I think that it's usher, how can I tell you that? Okay. So. He says from a statement in the Shulchan Aruch, I didn't look it up, about whether a person who holds you can't smoke on Tisha B'Av, is he allowed to give a cigarette to a guy who holds you are allowed to smoke on Tisha B'Av? I don't know what the Shulchan Aruch about smoking Tisha B'Av is, but that's what he says. Okay, so that's fine if the guy asks you for one. He thought that to give it to the guy, to go straight to the guy, that's lifnei iver, to give it to the guy.
Well, they're coming to ask you to buy it. I don't get the difference. I'm not making you come and buy food from me. You want food, it's not like, here, eat it. I was thinking if you're a Sephardi and I made food for you, right? Yeah. I would be over on lifnei iver if I gave you
You're over lifnei iver. You're saying the cook and tells is over lifnei iver to feed Rabbi Rappa's kids.
No, he doesn't have to come.
Okay.
We're not making you come. But if I go in and I say, I'm making dinner for you. You're a Sephardi. and I give a potato salad maybe over camp, I'm over on Lifnei Iver because I'm giving it to you. Mashenke, when I have a restaurant or I have a caterer, nobody is obligated to come in. Like we're open on a fast day. Are we over on Lifnei Iver? No, we're not over on Lifnei Iver because I'm not putting a gun to come and eat.
You're going to trade, it's not trade, what was it, trade, average?
Right, so it wouldn't be real favor. It's not real. It's Messiah.
Feed a Jew in a restaurant at a time.
They're coming to me. I didn't know they come.
So why not?
Maybe he's sick.
Buddy!
Wait a second.
It's nice and healthy.
That's something else.
That's something else. For wine. I ought to give it to him. He asked me. I'm allowed to give it to him?
Huh?
What the heck?
If you don't ask me for wine.
Say it's something else. That table. Okay, you say
The guy's coming in. And you're starving for a second. The guy's coming in.
It's not the place.
You're not putting it on the table and people come and eat whoever they want. So I got to the table, offer him food.
Okay, can I tell you what he's saying? What he's saying is like this. You're thinking that can I give hashgacha? I can give hashgacha because he might serve people who are allowed to eat it. But if the Jew is standing behind the counter and a guy walks up, nice guy, he's not wearing a yarmulke, and he walks up and says, "Hi, can I have a corned beef sandwich?" And he's going to eat on the fast day. Really, you're not going to give it to him. Really, I can't.
No, one second. If it's not with the Aver, it's not Messiah, then there's
Okay, so Shiloh's back. Yes. Okay, so that's true. There are cases that might be okay. There are cases that
We won't give hashgacha on a fast day because they were planning that we have.
But over here, the Sephardi's opening the store and feeding to people.
Most of my clothes are on the fast day.
Feeding to people who are. He's feeding to people here who are allowed to eat it. This is the backwards out. The Sephardi is feeding to Ashkenazim who are allowed to eat the food. I'm allowed to eat that food. He holds that I'm not allowed to eat it. So that was the question whether that should or should not be. And Rabbi Gnack, he says, well, Rabbi says they're allowed to eat in my restaurant, so it's mutter. So you're telling me you're telling me that it's lifnei iver to feed it to Ashkenazim. It wouldn't even be lifnei iver. You could even feed it to Sephardim because the Sephardim, Rabbi said the Sephardim are allowed to eat it, so it's not even a problem. Rabbi Shachta didn't.
I forgot about Yosef. I hold it's mutter. Why can't I give it to a Sephardi?
Well, you're a Sephardi? No. Because the Sephardi restaurant only can you give it to an Ashkenazi.
No, I'm asking you forget.
Okay.
Could Ashkenazi give it to Sephardi?
I think not.
No, that's also that would also be lifnei iver.
But she tells it's mutter.
Yeah, never mind.
Why? Because
That's not lifnei iver because I think it's mutter. Yeah.
Yeah, because he had the chiv to do the meal on the kaimah.
I'm giving him bad advice. I'm telling him to do something that he's not supposed to do.
Because he has the chiv to be...
You're saying even if it's mutter, but he's not supposed to be doing it. Yeah, forget about the history. It's just listening to this place. Okay. Anyhow, Rabbi Shachta thought you're not allowed to get yourself into a sex act. It's one thing for the guy to eat the lunch, but for me to say I'm going to cook food, say you should be allowed to eat it because it's going to be mutter for you as a he didn't. Okay.
Anyway, if you have meat and it's not